Thank you. Okay, good evening, folks. If everyone could take their seats, and we will start our meeting. We've got a pretty full agenda here tonight. I am Tom Jacobs, and it's actually Monday, January 14th, 2019. And folks, would you kindly take your seats so we can start? I appreciate you coming out on this cold January night, but I'm sure the business of tonight will keep you all warm. Again, I'm Tom Jacobs. Our select board is convening. I'd like to have the rest of the board introduce themselves. We do have far to our right, Stu Hurd is our town manager. Go ahead, Jane.
Good evening. Thanks for coming. Jean Connor.
Good evening, Carson Thurber.
Good evening. My name is Jim Carroll.
Hi, I'm Donald Campbell.
Hello. I'm Jeannie Jenkins.
Good evening, Chad Gordon.
Thank you, one and all. We always start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. If Jim would lead us, please.
Please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Jim. Honorable Jim.
Hey, that's not funny.
Jim is our watchdog in Montpelier, so he'll keep us informed of what's happening upstate. We do have a consent agenda, which contains a couple of the minutes of recent meetings, one being January 2nd, 2019, another being a January 5th, 2019 meeting. If you were not at that meeting, just abstain from, or note the meeting you were not at. And the minutes will reflect that you were not voting on that. We also have the warrants that were circulated and appeared to be accurate. And I'd ask for a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Other discussion, observations? Good. Hearing none, all in favor of the consent agenda signify by aye.
Aye.
Note your absences from whatever meetings you might not have attended. I'll start.
I was absent on January 2nd.
Thank you.
Weren't you?
Second.
January 2nd?
He got in. He came in late.
Okay.
Right.
That was, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Snuck everybody at the end.
You get a half a
You're
credit.
marked as absent on this, so maybe we should correct that.
Correct.
The public
I'm sorry,
meeting. Oh,
She had left
that's right.
because we went into executive session.
Very good, Nancy.
Oh, you were outed.
The minutes would accurately reflect the status. So the consent
I'm
agenda,
going to take credit for being there, but if you want to cut me out.
no credit for executive sessions. Okay. So the record will indicate that there were two not voting on the January 2nd meeting. We do have, as part of our process, an opportunity for the public to comment. We have a sheet that's been circulated or available, and I see three names on it tonight. Chris Wright, could you come up, introduce yourself, and sit at our table there?
Hi, how are you tonight?
Hi, Chris. How are you? You're just Chris Wright from Bennington.
I'll be representing my organization, Bennington Blotter. I'm here to speak to a previous meeting's request for funding for publicity of the town of Bennington, specifically certain businesses. I think you'll be opening up a can of worms if you decide to fund this organization. If an individual or a group of individuals decide to get together and help promote the town, that's on them. To create a nonprofit and request funding from a government entity, really that's just opening a can of worms. It may make me reconsider our grassroots effort to do what we've been doing for going on 2.5 years now. I don't want to come in here and ask for funding. We pony up what we do for what we do. It's on us. If we want to, we're community members, we care about our community, longtime community members. I've been born here in 1960. And we care about our community and we want to help out, and we're going to do that, and that comes out of our pocket, and that's the way it should be.
Chris, your organization again?
Bennington Blotter.
And tell the board what you do.
So that's a Facebook group, and we have 17,200 plus members. We have another organization that's down right now that we're regrouping with, and that's Bring Back Bennington, Vermont. And then I have 5,000 followers on my personal Facebook page. So anything we put out there is getting seen by 20-some-odd thousand people around the world, I can add. And it's not just local people. A lot of people think Facebook's a joke. It really isn't. If you want to promote your product or your services, Facebook's the way to go. You don't see people walking around with a newspaper in their hand or watching a TV. They got their phones, and that's where they're going to get their information.
Yeah, exactly. There are not too many of us hard copies left.
That's right.
But
But, you know, I really do think it's opening a can of worms. I would have to reconsider what we do, because we put out a lot of cash to do what we do, and if you're gonna hand out cash, you're gonna have a long line of people in here trying to get it. Thank you.
thank you, Chris. Joel Lensner.
All right.
Hi, Joel.
Hello,
Joel Lensner.
everyone. I just wanted to address your point just real quick. One of the things that the DBA is hoping to do is use DID funds, not general funds. And DID funds are funds that are paid specifically by downtown businesses to advertise downtown. It's not an additional tax. Unless you own a commercial business downtown, you wouldn't be paying the tax. It's already been taxed for 20+ years or so. The tax rate is set every year by the select board, and it's only taxed on commercial businesses. Those are the funds that the DBA are hoping to get part of.
Okay. Okay.
So,
What's your?
what I have for you tonight, and I'd like to pass this out real quick. I've been talking with Jim Farrell about this. On and off, he's been in an email string. Thank you. I'll wait till I get back over to the mic. I'll give us that. Let's share. So I'm really sorry I didn't make one for everyone.
That's okay.
So if you notice, this is the entryway to Bennington before you get to the bypass, before you get to 279. The only way that you know that downtown is coming up on the right is you see a sign, and you'll see this on page 2. It says Ben Hist Dists. Now, of course, we could, if we had some time, figure out that Ben Hist Dists stands for Bennington Historic Districts. But to a motorist passing by, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. So to try to highlight downtown more, if you move to page 3, what I found out by working with first Senator Sanders' office, and he put us in touch with the Vermont transportation people who got in touch with the New York transportation people. We have some options on what we could do there that wouldn't cost the town any money. It would cost perhaps a letter of endorsement from the select board. And my feeling is perhaps whatever we decided on might be also endorsed by Senator Sanders' office. I'm hoping. So some of the options actually list specific businesses, as you see. That would be done through a state program, and those specific businesses would pay to have their names listed on those signs. So prominent businesses, whoever. This is something that could attract more people to our downtown rather than going around our downtown up north or to the east. We think it's an important component that could be used in conjunction with a billboard right there at the Hoosick location. We had been looking at billboards in other locations, like a digital billboard in Troy. Being 30 miles away, we thought that fits in, if that were to happen, the digital billboard right at the bypass, or a paper billboard that's already there. It could be worked in with these state signs. If you go to the last page, it's just a different option that the states give of how it could be configured, where you can actually use businesses' logos rather than just straight text. You might have seen this on interstate signs when you're traveling in other states. This might be too much, and it might not look right for the area. It's also in New York. It's not in Vermont that we're talking about here. But we need to make use of something to draw more of that traffic back to downtown. So what I'm asking is there interest in pursuing this? And if so, could maybe Dan or someone else in the town office work with us to work with the state to read through the MUTCD, which is fairly complex, and see what exactly we can do where and how to do it, and then ask for a letter of endorsement from the board?
Jim, do you have any interest in doing this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got a question. Joel, did they give you any indication with respect to the fees associated with businesses being advertised? Well, I do want to tell you that in our committee meeting, and I'm really excited about this, you know, the thing that Phil Pappas and I have been working on for several years, and that's a digital billboard at Route 279. I brought it up in committee, and you know, it still is going to take a lot of exploration, but there may be funds available from the state and the feds to do digital billboards at places like 279, and not just 279, but around the perimeter of the state of Vermont. Because
That would be tremendous
as we well know, billboards are prohibited in the state of Vermont, but they're not in the states in Canada that surround us.
Again, this is really early on. I'd encourage, you know, legislature, yourselves, I think we need more than just a couple of these snapshots.
Well, of course, that's what I'm saying. I think maybe the next step could be if we could work with someone from the town office to develop specifically what we're asking New York State to do.
Yeah, because I think it's probably interstate, aren't there?
Yes,
relative to that?
yeah, there are, because here's the distinction. If it's a state highway, it's far less complicated, but this is a federal highway.
Right, so
279.
we've already, that's what Senator Sanders' office was able to do for us, was go through the channels, and we already have contacts at the New York Department of Transportation and the people that take care specifically of this for that region in Albany. So
What I'm going to do is I'll visit with the town manager's office and see what our ability is with the staffing that we have. And I'll get back to you personally to see them probably bring Jim into it, because there are a lot of moving parts in this one, as much as we'd like to make sure we got the bang for our buck.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, good. Thank you.
Sure.
I think the next citizen that's interested in speaking with the board is Dr. Dick Dundas.
Hello.
Good evening.
I'm here to talk about a project that the Bennington Free Clinic is doing. I wanted to reiterate that state surveys show that Bennington school kids have about the worst teeth in the state. They have decay, missing teeth, and gingivitis. And this translates into adults who also have among the worst teeth in the state. The reasons are manifold. Generational poverty is one. Absence of fluoridation in our water system is another. We know that life is better if you have teeth as a child and an adult. So the Bennington Oral Health Coalition has been working very hard over the past several years in our school systems promoting oral health. And the Oral Health Coalition, along with the Bennington Free Clinic, have taken on another project which we think will be helpful. This involves the Molly Stark Dental Suite, which for many years, as some of you remember, was run by Dr. Mike Brady. When he left, we, the Oral Health Coalition and the Free Clinic, worked with the supervisory union to try to preserve that dental suite rather than make it into an office. And we were successful, and we since then have updated the equipment. We have actually been seeing Molly Stark kids since October. We have a volunteer dentist and a paid hygienist. And we do exams, x-rays, cleanings, fluoride varnish, and sealants on molars. We're open a couple days a week at the school, and we refer the kids who need it to community dentists for other procedures. So this has stretched the budget of the Bennington Free Clinic, and therefore we are asking the citizens of Bennington to increase the funding that you have granted us for from $7,500, which has been traditional, up to $12,500. And I have a petition with me tonight. Some of you were approached out in the hallway outside, but if you haven't, I'd like you to think this over, those in the audience, and consider signing this petition, which will allow us to place this question on the March ballot.
Thank you, Doctor.
So may I pass this out?
It's free if anybody wants to sign a petition, certainly can do that. Okay, we're going to get into...
So you have to be a Bennington voter.
You folks, for the Bennington bag ban discussion, would you like to get ready so we can move right into it? Thank you.
Bennington bag discussion.
That's what Bennington plastic bag discussion. Sorry, it's been a long day. I'm glad somebody noticed or heard. Maybe as we get started, you could just introduce yourself and then we'll set the landscape.
So, my name is Michelle Alexander.
My name is Elizabeth Schumacher, and I'm Barbara Trueweber.
Great. Thank you very much for coming in this evening.
So I'm going to go ahead and show some slides up here if you guys would like to look at those. I'm a Bennington resident, and I'm here again tonight representing the 350.org Climate Advocates Group of Bennington. I'm here to share with you the problem of plastics, single-use plastic bags in our environment and in our waste stream. As we know, stores in our area bag our groceries and supplies in single-use plastic bags. One shopping trip may fill a shopping cart with over 20 plastic bags that are used on an average from 12 to 20 minutes. Yes, some of the bags are used as an occasional garbage bag liner or to pick up dog waste, but most are thrown away or stashed in a drawer or put under our sink until we have so many bags we don't know what to do with them, so we just throw them all away. We throw them all away because we have so many bags, and most of these recycling centers that we have, they don't even recycle these bags, and they also jam up the recycling equipment. So on average in the United States, only 1% of these plastic bags are returned for recycling, making 100 billion plastic bags thrown away annually in the United States. So to make all these 100 billion bags, it takes 10 million barrels of oil. Yes, I said 10 million barrels of oil. To make these bags that are used once, thrown away where they exist for hundreds of years, these bags also end up littered across our streets, roadways, and natural areas, where wildlife also mistake them for food. Additionally, these plastic bags blow around, they get caught in trees and branches, and they also enter our storm drains and find their ways into our streams, rivers, and lakes, where they move downstream, and they eventually end up in our oceans and along our coastlines. So when these plastic bags enter the ocean, These items don't biodegrade, but they break down by wave action and they photodegrade, meaning sunlight and water break these particles down into smaller pieces, resulting in a plastic soup. As you see on this map, there's an area in the Pacific Ocean created by the currents of the North Pacific Gyre, known now as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Unfortunately, you might have just seen last night in the news that one scientist had built some equipment to try and pick this up, but unfortunately it fell apart and it's now getting towed to Hawaii. So our oceans are becoming a plastic soup, where concentrations of plastics have been found to be 40 times greater than the amount of plankton found in the oceans. Additionally, these plastics are also mistaken by sea turtles, marine mammals, fish, and seabirds. Over 1 million animals are killed each year due to the plastic debris in our oceans by ingestion and entanglement. So as well as affecting wildlife, these plastics are also entering our human bodies. More specifically, the fish and seafood that we contain chemicals found in these plastic bags, which is low-density polyethylene, or LDPE. So you can see these plastic bags have been found to leach estrogenic chemicals into water and into the fish's bodies, where these chemicals bioaccumulate and they reach toxic levels. Scientific research now shows that these estrogenic chemicals can disrupt the hormones in our bodies, alter the function and structure of our cells, and they pose risks especially to developing fetuses, infants, and children. This type of toxicity also causes cancers. Estrogenic toxicity is specific to the hormone estrogen, which means that the substance mimics estrogen, or it binds to estrogen binding sites. Many types of these cancers that are estrogenic are the most common being a type of breast cancer. So yes, it's true, retailers like them because they're less expensive than alternative packaging, they're cheaper to manufacture, and they weigh less than paper bags, so they're cheaper to ship and to store. However, when you add up all the costs that society picks up for this, it's very costly. As you can see, we are being buried in plastic bags with detrimental effects to humans, animals, and the environment. In the United States, single-use plastic bags have been banned in the entire state of California and Hawaii. Additionally, in the Northeast, cities and towns and states that border Vermont have bag bans and fees imposed for the use of paper bags. For example, our neighbor, Williamstown, Mass., has a ban, with Albany, New York soon to follow. Additionally, these bags are banned in New York City and 9 other cities and towns. And one day ago, Governor Cuomo has decided to propose a statewide ban in New York State on single-use bags in the next state budget. In Vermont, Brattleboro and Wilmington have town-wide ordinances banning single-use bags. So our goal today is not to solve this problem alone, but rather we'd like to invite you all to help us to work together as a community to create an ordinance where there's been input from everyone in our community. An ordinance that supports and directly encourages the use of usable bags instead of a direct consumer switch from plastic to paper, where additional natural resources would be used. So our next step in terms of climate advocates, Bennington, is to, first of all, tonight hand out to board members the adopted single-use bag ordinance that Brattleboro has recently, well, about a year ago, adopted, as well as a sheet briefly describing the similarities and differences between various adopted ordinances across the country. So we'll also be handing out signatures of many Bennington residents and members supporting a ban on single-use bags. Also, this Wednesday on January 16th, we'll be attending a meeting of the Bennington County Waste Alliance, where we'll discuss single-use bag pollution and the adoption of an ordinance to ban these bags. And then in the next couple of weeks, we'll be inviting local businesses, organizations, and the public to a meeting where in February or March, where we'll be providing education, collaboration, and discussion regarding this topic of a bag ban and an ordinance in Bennington. So I'm going to now give you over to Barbara Weber, who's going to explain some of the similarities and differences in the various ordinances that have been adopted around the country.
Great, thank you very much.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, board, for having us tonight. Good evening. So again, I'd like to echo what Michelle has said. We are here today because we strongly believe in community collaboration and public education. Our goal today is to ask you to help us as elected officials to solve this problem. And we invite you to help us to work together as a community to find a solution to this difficult and complex issue. Since our initiative began in September, we have reached out and developed working relationships with various local businesses and establishments in Bennington. We connected with other 350 Vermont nodes in Southern Vermont who have passed or have tried to pass similar legislations. We have connected with a local paper to start a conversation and raise community awareness of our initiatives, and we have developed a town and regional petition that we have been circulating on the web and at local businesses. We are currently working on assembling get-togethers at local businesses in the community to raise awareness and encourage the conversation. For example, we have been collaborating with Old Castle Theater to bring a public screening of the documentary Bag It. And additionally, we have been coordinating with Bringing You to Vermont to host a get-together for local businesses to work with them and hear their point of view. We would really love the opportunity to work with you and fellow community members to pass this legislation with ease for the public and local businesses. Although this is a small step and the impact on our environment is small, we would like it to be a start to help build a greener, more environmentally responsible community. Thank you.
That's well done. Barbara.
Thank you for hearing us out tonight. We really appreciate the opportunity. I'd like, first of all, to give you the petition signatures that we have so far. We've collected over 200 without really too much work. We haven't canvassed or done any big blitz. So we feel very confident that we can assemble a lot more signatures on petitions. You'll notice as you're looking at them that they're not all Bennington signatures. People from Shaftesbury and Pownell and the college have also signed them, but we wanted to include them to show that there's a general sort of area-wide interest. So what I'd like to do is pretty boring. I'm sorry.
Not at all, Barbara. That's why we're here tonight.
But I want to talk through the portions of ordinances that other towns have done. And I did bring copies of the Brattleboro ordinance. As I was looking through a number of ordinances, I wanted to note similarities and differences that are, I think, interesting and important. So I tried to look at towns that were similar to Bennington. So I didn't look at New York City or LA or those sorts of places. So Brattleboro, Adams, Melrose, Massachusetts, New Paltz, New York, and Eugene, Oregon. I also looked at the Manchester ordinance that did not pass. So what the ordinances have in common are sort of standard definitions. The definitions were used mainly from the ASTM, American Society for Testing and Materials, and we're using those standards. And so standards for what exactly is a single-use bag, what is a recyclable or a reusable bag. For example, reusable bags must meet the standard of being able to carry 22 pounds at least 125 times over a distance of at least 175 feet. Wow. So that tells you exactly what a reusable bag is. Compostable bags also are set to a particular standard. One city would not allow paper bags that were produced from old growth forest. Also, what is a carry-out bag or single-use bag? And some things were excluded from that, like the bulk packaging for produce inside a grocery store is excluded from that definition, and there were several other things, and I'll talk about them in a minute. Stores are defined, so a lot of the ordinances actually said what is a shop, what is a store in our town, and listed those things, so stores, restaurants, pharmacies, etc. Some of the exemptions for, when they were defining stores, one of the things that they excluded were things like city-sponsored events. So they would just say, you know, people that are at farmers markets or places like that can use plastic bags. I would hope that our farmers market would do away with them. So some of the exemptions that most cities had were for thin film plastic that's used to protect from moisture passing through. So wrappings for raw meat and fish, newspaper wrappings, dry cleaner wraps, those sorts of things were exempted. Michelle briefly talked about the cost of the bags, and that's one of the things that we had really sort of carefully thought about is the additional cost to the merchant for non-plastic bags, because plastic bags really are cheaper. So most cities established pass-through cost. So passing a cost along to the consumer, but they all set a cap. So they would say a consumer or a retailer can pass through the cost up to 10 cents a bag. And again, this helps push people toward the reusable bags rather than even compostable paper bags, that sort of thing. They were generally, but not always, the ordinances were generally, but not always included in the solid waste ordinances. So some of them were standalone, but most of them were included in the general solid waste code. Enforcement has been an issue, and so I looked carefully at that. And it really varies widely. I was sort of surprised. So these are some of the enforcement offices. The town manager or designee, the municipal compliance officer, health department, inspectional services department, a city clerk, or any department having jurisdiction or licensing and code enforcement and inspection services. So cities place the enforcement where they thought it was most proper or more feasible for their particular towns. Each ordinance specified a penalty for violations. Mostly these were $25 a day for the first violation and $50 a day for a second violation. And it was specified that a violation would be documented by whatever office was in charge of enforcement, and then a letter would be sent to the person who was in violation. There were also deferments for undue hardships, exemptions, usually deferments could be obtained from the office of the enforcer for not more than 6 months or a year, and the petitioner had to show that the code would produce undue burdens on that particular entity. So I think that there's a lot of models that we can use. There are a lot of things that we may want to take into account individually just for Bennington, and we would want to work with you on those. So I thank you for your attention.
Okay, Barbara, maybe we have a couple of questions, just the initial ones.
Yes, are there questions?
There seems to be a common theme here that maybe it's like the motto going forward is like plastic bags are thrown away, but they don't go away. That's the basic problem that our environment has.
Right.
But is there any common reference point relative to assisting? A lot of folks use these to get their groceries home, and then they use it for other sources. To any of the communities supporting by giving away reusable bags or supporting the population so that they can.
I didn't find those in the ordinance. I would be surprised, I think, if they were if that sort of service was embedded in an ordinance. But we have thought about that and thought about addressing not so much the people that use them for kitty litter, as my daughter does, but people who have financial considerations in terms of buying or obtaining reusable bags. And I know that Brattleboro had started a campaign where they made reusable bags and collected reusable bags and put them in a central place where people could find them.
That's interesting.
I suppose you could use newspaper sleeves for kitty litter.
There are probably a lot of
options. Push came to
options.
shove.
Go ahead. I think what I'd like to do, Chad, could you just have questions or comments or reactions? We'll just talk about those tonight, and then what this basically is a great start to. We should almost use this as our how you go about adopting an ordinance, having this type of presentation, having this discussion, and then basically building the community support and an understanding as to why the ordinance would be considered. Because I think we all, as we sit around this table, have our personal observations and views how we'd like to address this. I mean, I could recommend an ordinance tonight. I don't think that's the way to educate our population. And I think your approach is really so appropriate. Jean?
Yeah, so thank you for being here. I share your interest in thinking about how we might be able to help people make a switch. I wonder, I mean, Aldi's is really an example in this community of a store who's already gone a long way toward this, so that you pay for a plastic bag, or you can bring your own bag, or you can use a box if there's one available for free, right? And I'm wondering about people who shop there, if they have thoughts about what it would mean if plastic bags weren't available, because I'm thinking that to a large extent people may have already made that switch that are used to shopping in that particular store. Do Do you have any ideas about
No,
that?
I don't. It would be interesting for us to visit on a Saturday afternoon and just ask people. One of the things that I was really pleased with as we were talking to Main Street merchants, we noticed that many of those have already switched to paper or some form of compostable packaging. So I think we're talking about maybe not downtown merchants in terms of switching over.
Yeah, I'm thinking the two large grocery stores. Yes. Thank you.
And one large hardware store.
I also, just going back to the reusable bags, I've done some searching to see if there were any grants possible to provide bags to people. And, you know, in Vermont, I haven't found anything, but I do know in other cities and other states, there have been grants that have been available and people have purchased bags. And we've also come up with ideas of maybe each store coming up, doing like a competition. They could have drawings going on bags. Maybe they could donate a certain amount of bags in the beginning of the switch over. So we have been like thinking of a whole bunch of different ideas.
Great. Yeah, I do think it's useful. I taught current environmental issues for many years, and one of the things we would do is go to the farmer's market, and as part of that, you know, as a fee in the course, we just had those stuffable bags. And those are really easy to use once you start using them. And I just think it's a quick conversion, but I suspect people will need a little help to make it. So, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming and great presentation. I've had a chance to talk with all of you individually, and I'm really supportive of what you're doing. I think I need very little convincing on this subject, but where I am feeling pretty strong is that I would like to make sure that this is not an undue hardship on our community. And so I'm really supportive of you working through the Bennington County Solid Waste Alliance, which I'm glad you're going to their meeting. If we make a change that is in effect for all of the towns in a region, then it'll be much easier for all of the businesses to comply with that and the distributors to comply with that. So, and I'm sure that what's happening in New York State will be germane to that meeting. It does feel like, as a society, we're on the edge of what I hope will be a durable change away from some of this particular kind of garbage. And I thank you for bringing this to us in a way that's very helpful and very gentle, considering the nature of the problem. Also, your list of signatures is very impressive. Thank you for making the effort to do that. That's it. No questions.
And don't stop. Continue to get signatures, because I think that's part of your educational tool for us as well.
First of all, you have my support on this. I mean, this is clearly a threat to our planet. As you and I have talked, there are other alternatives, truly biodegradable plastic bags and bottles that exist. And why they're not in the marketplace, I don't know. I don't understand. But Jeannie, you reminded me of something from my childhood with respect to Aldi's. When I was a kid, the AMP, where CVS is now, was the AMP. And there used to be those rolling casters. And the way that they got rid of their cardboard boxes, and people would load their groceries into those cardboard boxes and take their groceries home with that. And right now, I don't know if you know, but I know from the places where I shop, they have a dumpster dedicated entirely to cardboard. It's broken down, and that's true probably all over the country. And all of that could be used locally instead of plastic bags. And I want you to know that in Montpelier, this is a topic of conversation just in the short time that I've been there. So people are talking about this. So with respect to grocery stores, they could get rid of a lot of that cardboard, Hannaford, Price Chopper, and other places, by simply loading their customers' groceries into those cardboard boxes and not having to pay for it to be hauled off.
Thank you.
Sure.
Carson.
Could you just take a second, I think it was Barbara, you mentioned Manchester, I'm guessing you meant Manchester, Vermont.
Yes.
Can you just clarify, they voted this attempt down and when they did that? If that's common knowledge to everybody else, I apologize, I just wasn't clear.
Yeah, I think the select board didn't even take a vote on it, that it was offered and didn't. Is that right?
That's right.
And I don't really remember when. It seemed like maybe 6 months ago. Hasn't been that long.
Just ultimately, the way you're approaching this is, as Donald said it, it's a soft approach, it's great, it's educational. I'd like to avoid any pitfall we can, and if they happen to go down a path that didn't show success, we could actively avoid that, it would be wonderful. I don't see why we are on that path already, but you had said it, and I just wanted to find out, was there a glaring mistake in the way they presented it to their citizens or to their select board? So that's all I have.
Thank you.
I was just sort of reminiscing almost. It wasn't that long ago where when you went to the grocery store, they would say paper or plastic.
Yeah.
I had completely forgotten about that, but
You can still get paper.
you can?
If you ask, they'll give you paper.
Wow, I use my own, but anyway, that was just a little walk down memory lane. Yeah, I don't take a lot of convincing for me to be in favor of this either. I haven't used them in many, many years. And I think what appeals to me so much about this is it is something relatively small, it seems, but it could grow into, well, if I can do that, I can do this, and I should change my light bulbs, and it could snowball just by doing something so simple as not using single-use plastic bags anymore. So there's a lot more power to banning plastic bags than just banning plastic bags. Who knows what people will choose to do in the future. I was curious if you had any information given to you about the fines when they're levied. Does that go into to support another green initiative in the town, or what happens to that money?
I suppose the town can do whatever they want with it. It's interesting to think about using that for a particular environmental purpose.
Right.
Washington, D.C. has a method whereby they put the merchants charge for the cost of the bag, and that money goes into a particular fund. I think for parks.
It goes to support cleaning up the waterway, and additionally, it helps provide funding for bags for low-income individuals.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. This is an excellent presentation. I think this is probably just our first chapter, right? And we'll be getting back together again, also through these various processes of educating and sharing the information. I think we'll defer to you as to when you think it's far enough along in that process to revisit. But in the interim, we'll start looking at the ordinances themselves, and so that when you come back with your, basically the result of your campaign, we'll be able to move on it with due haste, because I think we should probably move this hand in hand, so that we're ready to move when and if. Yeah, Jean?
Is there a way for Barbara to communicate, or someone to communicate, to make sure we know of events you're having? And I mean, I'm on your mailing list, but I don't know if everyone is, so we would know if we wanted to attend, or...
I would be happy to put everybody on my mailing.
Or you could just maybe...
communicate with Stu.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you could use the email address of selectboard.
On the website.
At benningtonvt.org, and that goes to every member of the board.
There you go.
But as far as the media campaign, you have resources to conduct that activity?
Yes.
Great. Look forward to first meetings. Thank you very much for coming. It was exciting. Take your time while you everything's set up, we'll wait till you have a chance.
Thanks, sir.
Oh, yeah, it's just what I need, John. I don't have any late tonight reading out. Are we voting on it? Yes,
Stu, while we're waiting, could we, we're jumping a little ahead, I know it's contrary to protocol, but there are liquor licenses that we could maybe,
Yes, we have just 7 renewals, first and second class renewals, no new licenses. I can circulate this for your signature.
That's good.
Anything else you want to? Liquor licenses.
We're circulating liquor licenses.
One at the senior center. Do you want me to sign?
He's kidding.
Larson.
See if she's listening.
Not checking. She was so wonderful. What did he say?
I said, what's it like?
Wouldn't that be funny? Can you imagine?
Good evening. Okay, tonight, the next item on the agenda is a marketing plan presentation. I defer to whomever is going to make the presentation.
I'll start by introducing Lindsay. A copy of the presentation I just put in front of you. So
Okay.
As we're straightening this out, I'll get started. My name is John Shanahan. I'm the director of the Bennington Downtown Alliance, also known as the Better Bennington Corporation. And I'm going to start out just by saying thanks for giving us time tonight. And I'll give a quick history of what brings us here and who's at the table. Last spring, when the Bennington Downtown Alliance presented our annual budget and work plans to the select board, a conversation began about our marketing efforts and who is promoting Bennington. And that conversation, and let me explain first, I want to apologize. I don't normally use notes when I'm speaking with you folks, but my group didn't trust me to stay on topic for more than 60 seconds, so they told me I have to read, so that I'll do. It was during that discussion that there was a concern for the amount of marketing that was being done in Bennington and what could be done to increase it. Since that time, my board of directors has asked that I look to bringing a group together to discuss creating such a plan that we could present to the town. That idea made sense to me for quite a few reasons, but most importantly is because the BDA on our own, we are not funded to manage a marketing plan on behalf of the community. However, we do have a track record of bringing people together to accomplish tasks, and we've been very successful at it. For example, it was in our boardroom where the Bennington Economic Development Partners came into being, first starting with a conversation between us and the Bennington Chamber of Commerce. It was also where the Bennington Area Arts Council was revived and is now expanding, and doing very well. And it was also there that we became a partner with the Grow Bennington initiative, which, as we all know, is taking the town by storm, led by people right in this room. I knew that the Downtown Alliance's financial and human resources were too limited to accomplish this effort by ourselves, so I reached out to a few individuals who we had already established a successful working relationship with on multiple projects. These individuals have a great deal of experience in marketing and design, a history of high-quality professional branding in marketing for their own individual businesses, and who already are working together on various volunteer capacities for the town of Bennington. I reached out to them and asked if they would commit some of their time to assist us in creating a plan that the town could adopt and implement. They all agreed and have since contributed many hours of their time to this project. In addition, they also agreed to continue offering their time, utilizing their professional contacts, and meeting together to ensure that this plan is started, if it is adopted by the town of Bennington. All of this on a continued volunteer basis. Together, we prepared an infrastructure geared toward travel and tourism marketing. And how are we doing on the screen? Halfway there?
We might need someone that has some
Okay.
expertise here.
And we're here tonight to offer to the town. We're going to just give a quick outline of the plan and offer it to the town to use as a foundation for marketing and branding going forward. We are not here tonight to request that you provide us with any funds, nor are we expecting a yes or no answer this evening. We're simply here to share a broad outline of the plan and then ask that you consider it as you're creating this year's budget and the budgets going forth in the coming years. Before I introduce the members of the task force, I'm going to outline some of the discussions regarding the creation of this plan. I'm skipping forward just a little bit because I was going to refer to some stuff on the screen, but I'll go back. First, and most importantly, we realize that financial considerations are going to determine the extent and the scope of the plan. To address that, we did some research for surrounding communities. Some of the communities are larger than ours, some are smaller, some are similar to Bennington, some definitely depend on tourism. And I apologize that the community can't see, but I'm going to just bring up a few. It's in front of you folks. We'll use Rutland, for example. The RUVT campaign, or the Real Rutland campaign, they've committed $200,000 to that. There are 32,000 people in Rutland, and their branding is the Killington Valley Tourism Destination. Try to rebrand Rutland in a different light.
Is that an annual budget?
That is. Yeah. 100,000 of it, and jump in. I'm throwing out some numbers because Lynn has this later on in a presentation. But $100,000 of publicly funded money toward it, and $100,000 raised as match. The town of Manchester, a population of 4,200, earmarks $50,000 toward their tourism. In Bennington, currently has a budget earmarked for marketing, but it's currently being used for events and project budgets. It's not being used toward a strategic plan. Additional communities that I'm going to wait until we get to the presentation to get further into it.
I mean, you could talk about it. We always saw the article from
Brattleboro
requesting 10% of their revenue. And if you think of these on a per capita basis, I think Rutland equates to about $6 per capita. Manchester, with only 4,200 people, equates to about almost $12 per capita. Manchester as a percent of revenue is not only 1%, but it's an awful lot as a percent per person. And it's not always easy to uncover all of the revenues across the board. And I think from the If you look at corporations, which is my background, about 10% is normal in the marketing budget. Municipalities is all over the map, because we were a tourism destination or an industrial town, so it's going to be all over the map.
And another part of the presentation that you have in front of you just speaks to some of the marketing efforts in our area. One, starting with the state, Vermont Department of Tourism. We do have a presence there through the Vermont Downtown Program because we participate, and the Vermont Chamber of Commerce, both who do represent Bennington, but they also represent the state as a whole. There are some regional marketing efforts, one through the SEVIDS project, and that's the Southern Vermont Economic Development Strategy, which is Bennington and Windham County. But that's more of a focus on economic development and workforce development, more than travel and tourism. And then, of course, there's a Bennington Area Chamber of Commerce. The Bennington Area Chamber is a membership organization, has a small marketing budget, but it's although stretched, it is very effective. And we've had multiple meetings with Matt Harrington, the director, regarding the Chamber's stance, the Chamber's focus, and their recommendation to us as a community. Matt has shared with us the efforts that are taking place in Manchester and has strongly recommended that Bennington make an effort as well, not to be the leader, but just to keep up. We've asked Matt to join us later on, just to add something to tonight's presentation. So he'll be coming up after Lynn goes through the plan. And there's also the Shires Marketing, which is now being incorporated into the chamber, and I'll let Matt speak to that. That focus is on travel and tourism, but again for the region, nothing for Bennington. So we've seen the lack of a marketing effort specifically geared toward Bennington, which is why we got together. We believe that any marketing plan needs to be consistent and meaningfully funded. It needs to be ongoing and not just a one-off ad campaign or promotional event.
Put him on the payroll.
Yeah, so we're up and running.
He just hit one, that was it.
As an example, some one-off campaigns include some major investment of time and money on private individuals, and you'll all remember them. But in particular, the Route 7 billboard that Kathy Hoisington created and had installed just over the New York border. She did that at an expense of over $12,000, which she personally paid for. Sheila Hardin, who I'm introducing me before I'm doing the introductions, from Bennington Potters, annually takes out one of the centerfold ads of the Berkshire Visitor's Guide, which is one of our huge target market areas. I know what Sheila spends. It's over $8,000 per year for that, because one year Sheila also took out an ad for both downtown Bennington and for the Bennington Chamber of Commerce as well. You'll also remember last year Eric Peterson organized a television ad campaign at the cost of $27,000. That alone puts things in perspective. That was $27,000 for an ad campaign in the Albany market that lasted just through the summer. What we're proposing tonight is a multi-year approach that's going to be aligned with these state and regional marketing efforts. Our first year's focus is going to be on reestablishing the town's branding and marketing efforts that were already in place, notably the Vermont Begins Here campaign that was implemented when the town employed a staff member whose background was in marketing. He has since moved, and that campaign has gone dormant. We realize the town lacks designated personnel to properly manage this plan that we are proposing, as it requires a great deal of time. And to address that, we are going to outline the steps that will be overseen by the task to make sure that this plan is implemented and up and running, And then I'm going to turn this over to Lynn to take it. But before I do, can I introduce everybody first? Lynn Green, who will be showing you the PowerPoint explaining the outline of this plan, is the co-owner of the Four Chimneys Inn in Old Bennington. And Mata Leon Griffin, her and her husband Dave own the Mount Anthony Country Club. Sheila Harden is the owner of Bennington Potters. And Eric Peterson is the director of Old Castle Theater. I think I've mentioned all of you in my presentation here. And this is the team that I've asked to volunteer for the BDA and helping us put this plan together. So Lynn's gonna now, I'm gonna slide this over to you.
Okay.
I'm
a standard, so I understand. Is it everyone can hear me?
Can you actually take the mic with
sure.
you for the TV? Thank you.
So I'm just going to start with some of the objectives that we identified in making this recommendation to the town. One, first and foremost, is to build a marketing infrastructure for Bennington that we can build on year after year. I think John's point was so key about we have a lot of good efforts that are over here and over there and over there, but to have one unified effort that the town owns and that the town can build on year after year is really important. Our second objective is to effectively reach our target market, to inspire that target to choose Bennington as a destination. We want to leverage current assets. I mean, John talked about the Vermont Begins Here, and we have some good work that's been done. We don't just throw that out and say, well, we didn't think of it, we don't want to use it. We want to use what we can use. And to collaborate up and across. So whether that's the State of Vermont, Department of Tourism, the Vermont Chamber, the Bennington Chamber, which we've mentioned we've worked pretty closely with, and then even opportunities for public-private partnership that can help stretch your dollars further. The product is Bennington as a tourism destination. That's our shops, our restaurants, our hotels, our art, our outdoor recreation and events. The target market is really threefold: day trippers from the Albany Capital District, the Berkshires, and from other areas in Vermont. Pass-through traffic, whether that is people coming through Bennington and getting them to pull over and stop, or people passing by Bennington on the 279 bypass. Weekenders, we know people come from all over the world, but obviously you need a lot of money to reach everyone, so we would focus on the Northeast travel market, specifically New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, the Hudson Valley, and Albany. We need to sell a lifestyle. Visit here, move here, be here. Vermont begins here. And so I want to talk a little bit about today's consumer. Today's consumer is visual. This is an inn in Maine, and they've devoted all of the real estate above the fold on their website to this photograph, where you can just almost taste that maple syrup on their waffles. You can look at nantucket.net. You feel like you're sailing into the Nantucket Harbor here. They have no words, no copy up on the upper portion of their website. Woodstock, Vermont, selling the lifestyle. And even when they do use words, they lure you in with the picture first. And so people are busy now. They don't have time to read things. You need to pull them in. You need to make them want to learn about you, want to go to your location before they're going to read more. And you might say, well, we're not Woodstock, we're not Nantucket, but I would argue that Bennington is very visual, that we have so many assets that we can market. And so because I have information of my own experience that translates, I'm going to share some of that with you. In the last year, I really shifted my own business's marketing to really market Bennington as a whole and to really draw people in with that lifestyle campaign. These pictures were all taken in and around Bennington. The one is technically in Pownell, but these are all Bennington. This is a 9 square off of my Instagram account for my business. And today's PR wins are with influencers. So if today's consumer is visual, the PR wins are with influencers. These are the bloggers, the travel bloggers, and the Instagram influencers, etc. So this is the Northeast travel blogger, And you can see that far left picture is actually Equinox Pond. There's the Dollar Bridge in Arlington. But when she writes and she talks about her travels, she does it with her style, and she talks to her audience of about 35,000 followers. So she's speaking their language. Here's another one that's a very high-quality influencer. She does upstate New York and Vermont. I actually hooked up with her through the Vermont Department of Tourism. You can see in this lower right how she did a blog about 24 hours in Bennington. And if you go read that blog, very high-quality photographs and a really nice job writing about Bennington. So here's a little example of how you can win with influencers. So the yellow note, the one I just showed you. So I hired her. She did this photograph for me. We posted it on my site. It's of the Old First Church, obviously. And you can see, it's really hard to do this. You can see in the circle here that the location is Bennington, Vermont. And then I, at the time, only had a few followers, so I just have 200 likes, not a big deal. But Sunny Coastline started to notice me. And Sunny Coastline started following me. Well, Sunny Coastlines has about 130,000 followers in the Northeast travel market. So you start to get some traction, and now we're talking with her about coming here and getting some dates to come do something on Bennington. Then the Yellow Note took the same photo, put it on her account. So this is the Yellow Notes account. And the location, once again, is Bennington, Vermont. Well, she has about 50,000 followers, so there's all this conversation about Bennington here, and even more likes. And no sooner had she put it up than Country Living Magazine saw that beautiful picture of Bennington, Vermont, and put it on their site, their Instagram account, which is basically an online magazine now. So they have 1.7 million followers, and every one that they reach within their 1.7 followers sees that that's in Bennington, Vermont. And now it's living on their page, because this is their actual page. So anyone that just searches through their online magazine, they're seeing Bennington, Vermont. So that's just one little example of the power of social media and the power of influencers.
Would you take a question or two when we're doing this, or would you rather wait till the end? Because I just, you know, how do you get on the influencer's radar?
Good question. You have quality content and you get on the radar.
It's not a show.
Quality content is going to attract their attention. So investing in photography, some of them you can reach out to and you can do some paid posts and paid sponsorships, and those can really work out as well. So it's mostly investing in your own product, your own quality content, and that will attract the attention, and it just snowballs. So this is an example. We always talk about attracting the young people, where because of my content, I attracted the attention of this new girl in New York City. She's a millennial influencer, has 168,000 followers, and she came to the inn for a few days, and when she took this picture, it was really nothing to do with the inn, but it says Bennington, Vermont, and that goes out to all of her 168,000 followers. So the point is, we really, and Matt's doing a lot of this with the chamber with his very limited budget, but there's so much opportunity for synergy there that when one of us gets the attention of an influencer to really make that experience so powerful. Or if we're paying influencers, which you also can do, and there's some value in blog writers and having people write for you, because especially in a situation where the town doesn't have a marketing staff, you don't have a marketing manager that can dedicate time to write blogs for the next year, you need to outsource some of that, and you need to spend some money on some of that, and that's what we're recommending as part of the tactic that you follow. So consumers, we said, are visual, so visual campaigns paint a picture. So here's a picture of a campaign for Bennington, Vermont. If you look at the top 4 pictures, those are all just lifestyle shots. It's barns, it's bridges, it's maple syrup, it's the farmer's market. But if you look at the bottom, those are all individual businesses. So there is opportunity to do some private-public partnership to stretch your dollars further. So what would this look like in a campaign? For example, when we talk about Facebook promotions, if you look at the right side of the screen, if you pull, in this case, this is just a mock-up, but it was a mock-up of Mike Madison's business. If he was one of the people that was part of the partnership, we would be pointing everyone to Vermont Begins here, but it would be specifying his business. And then the next one might be the museum, and then the next one might be the covered bridge. So it's still a campaign versus, having all these different looks and feels, or a lot of times we'll do a lot of business will chip in on a full-page ad or a half-page ad in a magazine, but it ends up being kind of a collage of different ads. And this gives it a better look and feel that people are thinking Bennington, 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 and these are just the components of Bennington. On the left side here, this is just for anyone that's worked in Facebook, the power of the Facebook targeting tools. You can say we're targeting the Northeast, maybe that's 15 million users, but then you can say I only want the people that have checked Vermont as an interest, and maybe you get that down to 10 million people or 3 million people, and then you can say if it's the museum, maybe they're interested in arts, and so you can really target who you're reaching and really make your dollars stretch further. And they give you measurements. I know a lot of times when we were talking in that last meeting about the last budget session, you were talking about Google Analytics and being able to measure things. Well, the Facebook tools can really show you. I just did it. This is one of my businesses promotions I did just leading up to December. And just for a 1-week promotion, reached 32,000 people with 2,800 people engaged, so about 9%, and 2,200 clicks. And I'm just a little tiny business, so it really does have some power. And this Google Analytics, of course, any website has to have the analytics attached to it so you can see exactly where your clicks are coming from. So really what that says is at the center of all this is a website. And so if you have a promotion, you have to be able to send people somewhere. They've got to click and go somewhere. And so we would recommend that you have a tourism lure site that speaks to the people, but that's built for the search engines. And that is really where it gets kind of complex and it takes a lot of management, but your content has to be fresh and relevant and optimized. You need SEO management, which is crucial, that search engine optimization management. It needs to be visual, as we've talked about, and you have to have disciplined content. When you're in a corporation, it's very easy to say, we're only going to do this. In a municipality, you can really get that project creep and think, can't you just cover workforce development, or can't you just cover some other topic? I think our recommendation to you is that you really focus on a tourism lure site to begin with. And the good news is you already have some really powerful assets. Michael Harrington, about I think 5 or 6 years ago, we had the grant and the work group came up with the Vermont Begins Here tagline, which we in our group agree is very powerful. Also, as part of that grant, he did some really top-notch videos, which clearly would not throw those out. We want to revive those. This site has been kind of down for a while, but revive those. They are a little more business development focused, but there are opportunities to kind of link out to other areas as far as business development and still use that content. Other than that, this site has some great photography, but it is pretty much a shell. If you go there now, we turned it back on just to kind of see what was there. And it is pretty much just a shell. So we need to bring that up to 2019, or that's what we recommend you do, is bring it up to 2019, HTTPS, ADA compliance, but then also the look and feel of 2019 and the content. Tied to that would be an Instagram account, and then also a Facebook account, which we have gone out and grabbed the Facebook handle. Now, just a little disclosure here, I also wear a hat of Grow Bennington initiative, and so I personally went out and got the Vermont Begins Here handle about a year ago for Instagram. I mean, anyone can get a handle if it's not taken, so I got that handle. So that's kind of been my pet project. So this is photography I paid for, and I posted on Vermont Begins Here. So even though this is my business, I mean, I've given a lot of my photography to the town, and so you'll see that lot of crossover. But our goal is to continuously invest in the good imagery that we can put up on Vermont Begins Here versus me doing it, on a random Saturday when I have some time with my own photography. In years 2 and out, we avoided targeted print in year 1 just because it's just very costly. But in print in general is very costly, and you can say that that's going the way of the dinosaur, but there are some targeted pieces that can be very effective. Some of the Vermont vacation guides, the Berkshire Visitor Guide, and a couple of other cherry-picked spots can be quite effective, and we want to look at that in year 2 and beyond. Targeted TV, and I say video here too, because with the grant that John talked about, that Gold Castle did the TV a year ago, we still have that production. And with some changes to some voiceover, pointing it to Vermont Begins Here, there are all kinds of distribution for TV, YouTube, social media, et cetera. And then looking again at some targeted spots in Albany in future years is a strong possibility. So the idea is to create a slow and steady build over time. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so the idea is here in year one, just really focusing on the VermontBeginsHere.com, the search engine optimization, the analytics, the quality content. And that sounds like a check the box, but it's a lot of work. The influencer marketing, getting some of them to help us with some of our content. And then paid online and Facebook promotions, Google pay-per-click, et cetera. Moving into outer years, targeted print, having a conversation at some point about digital outdoor might be a possibility, Albany TV or just video, social media, et cetera. We did put some things in the parking lot. We also have had some very good conversations about the 279 exchange, and I've had even conversations with Jim and various people. There's a lot of good work that's been done on the billboard concept. We didn't put this into this plan, just knowing that you don't really have any marketing staff at the town, but that is a real opportunity that should be looked at. So the idea is all of these activities feed people into the visitor centers and people into the shops, hotels, restaurants, attractions, et cetera. So in your packet you have a detailed, I know this is a lot of numbers, but what we recommend that you have as your marketing budget for year one is $75,000. I know it sounds like a big number. I think it's actually a very small number, but it's about less than 1%, about 0.6% of the total budget revenue-wise, and about $5 per capita. And if you remember, Rutland, I think, was about $6 per capita. We don't know what it is as percent of revenue. In Manchester was about $11.90, I think, per capita, and about 1% of their revenue.
How big was
Brattleboro's asking for
Manchester's
10.
budget?
What? 50.
Yeah. How big was their marketing budget?
50. Rutland was 200. So part of what this is no print in year one, but it's a build over time. The TV video is just basically taking that reel that we have, doing some changes to the voiceover, putting it in the welcome centers on a continuous reel, putting it out on social media, et cetera. That's your year one. Partnering with the Chamber on travel expos, email marketing, that's an opportunity that Matt and I have talked about where we could really have some cost synergy there. A media photo bank is really important to be able to track traditional media, even the Vermont Department of Tourism, et cetera, to be able to share Bennington with the world. And then most of it goes into the web social piece of it because that's so critical as you're kind of the core of your wheel there. So then we were looking at over time growing that, but another way that you can look at this in the outer years is, do you want to staff this position? And then some of your agency work goes into your in-house staff, and so there's some playing with numbers in your out years. But I think in this first year, you have a lot of free labor right here, because if you were to hire a marketing manager, there goes all of your working dollars. There goes your $60,000, $75,000, and you don't have any money left for your marketing. So we might be crazy, but we're free. And that was just because John asked us to volunteer, but obviously this is just a recommendation. You can take it, leave it, put it on the shelf, do it in a different way, hire someone to do it. There are many ways to crack this nut, but we wanted to help John in answering your question from last year about who's doing marketing and what's the marketing plan for the town. That's all I have.
No, I just, before, if you have any questions, I asked Matt Harrington if he would speak this evening.
Sure, and I'll just kind of reiterate, I've had a couple conversations with John about this over the years.
a couple conversations with select board members as well, but especially with John, as specifically the chamber has had to pivot into a regional role, which, you know, we still do a lot of promotion for Bennington, but now we do a lot of promotion for Rupert and Peru and Manchester, and that's just kind of the way that goes if we plan to be a regional chamber. But I really appreciate John and this working group where they've kind of come to that understanding and said, okay, we get that, and we know that there's going to be some synergies together, so how do we work together? And probably just one of the really points that I want to push home, and I've been at the chamber now for 3 years. I'll be going on to my 4th year this January, and just look at how much we've had to work at both the Bennington brand and then the Shires of Vermont brand. And so and when we met with this group some time ago, just really reiterating the marathon approach, which is, you know, you're going to hit mile 7, you're going to hit mile 12, and you just go into low gear. And it just really takes some time to build up the engagement and the followership. And then you find that, you know, Instagram doesn't work anymore, and you've got to pivot to Snapchat. And so I think what I ask my members and what I ask our communities, and I guess I would ask this board on behalf of the BBC, is just the patience to really, you've got a great group of dedicated, as Lynn said, free volunteers at the moment to explore this. But also, I think you said at the end, Lynn, just a recommendation. So I've looked over this plan. This group has looked over this plan. It really is at the will of the select board what you want to do. I would recommend an entity or an institution, somebody like the BBC or Grow Bennington, but you know, Grow Bennington's under BBC to execute this. But as Lynn said, you can also hire an outside contractor too. Anything else that I promised you I would say that?
Just to clarify, this isn't a Grow Bennington thing.
Right.
People associate me with Grow Bennington and wearing different hats here.
And I also want it to be understood, this is not a BDA or DBA, you know. This is the town of Bennington's marketing plan. We will decide who will be carrying the banner and whether or not we do it in-house. We use the effort that you've already undertaken. I just don't want the world to think that we're just farming this out. And I think it's somewhat different than a marathon. I think it's almost a relay. First year is basically, here's what you've already brought to the starting line, and then it's a pass-off, handoff that a relay would have.
Let's settle on a Tough Mudder, because there's going to be a lot of obstacles and mud pits along the way. So, but absolutely, Tom. And I think the other thing is just I guess from me standing up here, I can speak a little bit to the synergies. Just this afternoon, Lynn and I were talking about the fact that within the next couple of weeks, we'll grow our tourism, the Chamber's tourism email list to about 50,000 people. And so we want to partner with this plan, whether that be the town or BBC or whomever, to help execute that and help produce some of that. We obviously have an account for Constant Contact and MailChimp. So as Lynn pointed to before, that's an area that we'd like to share some of that with you. And I guess I say that in a selfish way, where we've had to, you know, do a lot of our focus on Northshire over the last couple of years, and I don't want Bennington or the South Shire to feel like the Chamber hasn't heard that or taken that into consideration. And so a lot of this, I was very excited when John and this group came to me, because it was like, yes, good, there's something that the Chamber can sink its teeth into for Bennington, and likewise we're working with Pownell and Arlington on some initiatives. So we're very much in Bennington. We plan to stay right here in Bennington and help this region. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
And we know we're presenting it to you to take into consideration when you're going through the budget process, but are there any questions to start off this evening?
Can I go? How are you going to measure success? You know, just as an example, and it may not be a popular one, when Joel and his group did their raffle, each one of those nearly 5,000 raffle tickets represented a $10 purchase in Bennington. So it comes out to $50,000. How are you guys going to measure success?
I need to take that one. I think one thing to remember is that we've had a lot of good discrete promotions along the way, and that is a way that you can absolutely opt to go, because there are good things happening. But this is an opportunity, when you said we need kind of a more centralized marketing plan, you will be building infrastructure. So year one, to get that website up and running, get things going, you'll have Google Analytics, but they probably won't be exactly what you're looking for them to be in year one. Because you're going to have time to do that, kind of that slow and steady build. But when you build a website, I mean, you hook up the Google Analytics, you know what traffic you're getting. When you do a MailChimp, you know, in my business, I can tie it right through to exactly the amount of dollars that came through in reservations from that email. I can do a Facebook promotion, and Facebook gives me the clicks to my website, but my Google Analytics tell me how much revenue I actually generated. Except for phone. I mean, they don't know phone, but they can tell me everything that came through my web. And so you just have to work with the analytics you have and know that we have recommended that you have all of these things in place, and then you'll see the results.
Thanks. John?
Very excited to see this presentation tonight, so thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for volunteering your time. I had some questions coming into it, but your presentation answered them, so just thank you for volunteering and keep up the work. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I second what Chad said. Thank you very much. And it feels like a great effort for us to be looking at some kind of a marketing plan that will persist over the years. So I think one-off, if you're coming in saying we'd like to do this year, I would be less interested than if there's some signs that this is going to continue for a while. And I do feel like it's really great to have people that are invested in this community doing it. It's not some consultant coming in saying, try this shiny thing, but it's you folks saying, look, we're willing to roll up our sleeves and really work at this. I appreciate it a lot. One of the things about the Rutland investment, at least half of it came from another source, right? So was that from the ski areas, or what was the other sources? Are there other sources that might be available to us for match on this? Going from a $10,000 to $20,000 line item to a $75,000 line item is a huge jump for us. When you think about the fact that we just spent 2 Saturdays nickeling and diming every budget down, $1,000 here and $1,000 there. And, not saying it's not worth it, but are there opportunities for match that we might be looking
there
to
are.
in a fairly short term?
And Lynn, I think, quickly spoke to it there in some of the, and not immediately, but where the opportunities for individual businesses to participate, where they are specifically mentioned in some of the advertising and marketing efforts.
I think the one thing to be careful there is that, and just having come off of a year of raising money with Grow Bennington, is that's a full-time job. And so I think where there are opportunities, absolutely, but you will want to think about, do you just want to staff this marketing person, and that is part of their charge? How do you want to handle that? Because I don't think that John's equipped for that, or this task force is necessarily equipped for that. Another one that comes up a lot of times, and we even talk about it, is let's just get some interns. Well, that takes managing interns.
Yeah.
So you just have to think through that there are places you can make those kind of wins, but who's going to do the work on it? And that's just something to think about when you think about this.
We have discussed it. It does come down to the time to make it happen. But it is designed where businesses could have an opportunity to control.
Yeah, and this is tricky, obviously, because it's a different tax a little bit. As Joel pointed out, the DID tax is coming from kind of businesses and really designed for downtown marketing. This would be more from a general fund. So every citizen would be putting in for it, which I think is good. But I think every citizen then needs to know why this is important to them, not just to the businesses, but to them. And I can connect those dots in my head, but it might be good to do a little, to take that a little further.
All of these organizations here, we all spend money advertising our own companies. Oldcastle just signed another contract with WAMC, And Bennington will be mentioned in every single one of those ads. What this will give individual companies is an opportunity with Vermont Begins Here to join a much bigger effort. Excuse me. One of Oldcastle's problems is we're like everybody else, we have a very small budget, and there's no larger budget that is supporting all of what the Country Club and Bennington Potters and Fort Chimneys and all the other companies do. This would be the first time we would ever have that overall budget. And so that would make a tremendous difference. And it's also why it can't be just a one-year effort. It's got to be and I know you work in 1 year times in terms of the town budget, but a 3 to 5 to even 10-year plan is what we really ought to be looking for. That's what our competition has, and we need that too.
Then we want to see durable change. So,
absolutely.
If durable change is going to happen, it's going to have to be a sustained investment. I think we get that. But we want to make sure that whatever it is really going to give us a lot of benefit. And I like your presentation a lot, and I particularly like the fact that it comes from people who have a lot of skin in the game.
She wants to skin in the game. Do you want to? No, we all have skin in the game. Yeah, okay. That's part of the reason this team exists. Everybody at the table has a lot of skin in the game, a lot of experience. And it was difficult for me to even ask them for their time because I know the amount of time that everybody's already putting into other efforts that we're involved with as well. Fortunately, they all said yes. We're glad that we got to the point where we are tonight. As you move forward and decide what resources we are able to put toward it, I just ask that keeping in mind as difficult as any number is, we're at that point that if we continue to do what we've been doing all along, we're going to be where we are. We either have to make that investment and go with the talent that we have and the resources that we have available. Because I just think, even though it is a large number, we're getting triple that for free at the moment. Part of the presentation that I didn't get to is a quick example is Woodstock, Vermont. The website first year was $70,000. Williamstown, Mass. Spends $3,500 per month on SEO alone. They are large numbers, but these communities that we compete to for the same tourist market are making that investment. And as hard as it is to swallow, we either get in a race or we get left behind. And getting left behind would be a terrible thing to do, but getting left behind and still having us here demanding results is futile and frustrating.
That's a really good point, John, because I think, frankly, we have been letting ourselves get behind. We have not really reserved for this time. So we're coming in not late in the game because it's an opportunity, especially with the resources that you folks are bringing to us, which we can't even measure in dollars and cents. That's the relay part of it, that eventually we have to pass that off into the infrastructure of our community, so that whether it's within a Department of Economic or Community Development or some portion of that, it's got to be picked up. And I think probably what we're being asked to do is to look at our budget, to say, okay, we haven't kept money aside to get into the game. If you want to get there, you're going to have to spend this, and we're fortunate to have already an asset coming to us, and how we use that for the first year or two is going to be significant. So I think that's a part of our job to share with the community, that it's going to cost if we want to have a real marketing budget, because I hear just from the presentation tonight that what other municipalities are doing, they're all really six-figure plus, and with person power within the towns to run their marketing campaigns. And frankly, we haven't done that now, and it's time if we're going to. And if we're not going to do it, then we might as well put zero in our marketing campaign, because it's not going to be particularly beneficial.
This is also the perfect time to begin this process, because we have coming within the next couple of years the largest downtown development in the history of Bennington. And that is going to bring people to Bennington. They're going to be hearing about that. And if we can begin that now, we'll be much better off 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now.
Great point. I'm just going to get down. Did you want to?
I'm good.
Yes, sir.
I have the good fortune of knowing, hearing a little bit of this beforehand. I just want to remind folks that are sitting in front of us right now, I mean, I know you were reluctant to grab the microphone, but you guys are all incredibly vested in this community, whether it's boards you serve on, businesses that you run, and now you're again offering your time and expertise to go one step further for Bennington. I mean, you're not sitting here saying, here's what you should do. You're saying, here's what we're willing to do with you. I know we might get a little sticker shock. We haven't put our minds around that entirely, but the concept of it is well needed. And John, you just summarized it pretty well there. I mean, it's like we are already behind the 8 ball on this. And if we're going to watch these opportunities just go by, the downtown redevelopment happening it just seems crazy not to do this and make an effort for it.
We're not going to get a story out there.
It just seems so clear cut. I know it's not going to be easy from a budget standpoint. That's always the hurdle. We've sat here for the last 2 Saturdays and just, told people to knock down $1,000 at a time. So that's kind of the 2 ends of the spectrum. But thanks for doing this tonight. I mean, it is fantastic, and it's going to be some hard conversations.
Yeah, incredibly grateful is what I am right now. I don't know when you people sleep, but thank you. Had you talked at all about using radio? The power of VPR and WAMC is tremendous. And I don't mean paying for advertising, but getting them down here, going to the studio, and I guess it's Troy. Anyway, you never know. We've got some great stories to tell, and they do like to hear them. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and offer my daughter, who's a homegrown girl. She's a freelance writer, and she may be willing to help you guys if you need something written by a millennial who grew up here. She may be willing. Sorry, Jillian. I apologize.
I think there's something really remarkable about the coming together and the focusing and the understanding of basically building an infrastructure. It is a marathon, because it really is an awful lot of relentless work. We don't sleep because we're marathon runners, but you're also totally correct about it being a relay, because if something happens to one or the other of us, the asset is in somebody else's hands. There's a structure, so it's not that flash in the pan or one-off thing. And so, and I just want to emphasize, it's so important that there be a website that is the hub of the wheel. I mean, so all of the analytics, all of the counting, boosting, all of those things, I mean, I need it. You see, we all, as separate businesses, have the opportunity of using that, because then that's how our marketing efforts can be Bennington Town branding. And so, but to have the infrastructure is what's really needed.
What's impressive is you're not the consultant's, the best day of a consultant is when she comes into town, and the second best day, maybe it's flipping, when she leaves. You're vested in the community as our consultants.
We're also building
yeah.
the product.
Yes.
In other words, an advertising campaign always depends on what the product is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we're all of us synergistically together and anybody else coming, that's the product that we have to offer. So that means we're on the, we're on the thing of having to deliver that experience 365 days a year, you see, whereas if it's just the skin, there's the possibility of somebody, you know, it's like, oh no, it's not real. You see, the skin, the advertising isn't real. So the earnest effort of all of us, and then basically a structure that lets us meet and talk and argue and dispute, and then how to coordinate with the change, you know, with the different shifts in terms of brands and things like that. It's just very exciting. So
It is.
I knew we'd get you to share your thoughts on this.
Thank you very much.
Pass the microphone before.
And so, you know, like wrestle with the money, and I totally get it that each $1,000 is got sweat and blood on it. You see, so we're wrestling. You have a job to wrestle, and then we have a job to basically discuss all of this with our fellow members of our community. And again, let's find out where we are, because talking about it and doing it and we all know this, because we all have skin in the game. We're here tonight because we do. The difference between talking about it and saying, you should do this, and you should do this, and you should do this. Well, watch this. See that index finger? And I'm an older sister. I've got this powerfully. But see those 3 fingers? Those are pointed back at me. So let's get to that space, which is what am I doing, what am I doing, what am I doing? And we're doing stuff, so anyway.
Great.
I'm
This is a great,
grateful.
really a fine presentation. I'd like to, just for the spirit of transparency, if there's anyone in the audience that has a question for the panel here that might be helpful to them and to the board, feel free to ask the questions. Sure, just you're going to have to stand up and identify yourself, and maybe that microphone that John's got, you better take it over to you, if you can.
So real quick, my name's Jack Hurley, and as you noticed like a couple minutes ago, I'm a bit of a techie, so I like to go
Notice that.
Yeah. You're welcome, by the way.
Did you leave your card?
I know. Well, I'm not a professional. It's just more like a hobby, but yeah. So like I use YouTube, Facebook, Tumblr, Reddit, and you guys said you used like Instagram and Facebook. I wonder if they could try to tap into like Twitch, Reddit, because like Twitch is like the streaming service that's going to replace television, because nowadays you can go to Twitch, watch a 30-second ad, watch your football game, and you don't have to pay $80 for cable. You could just pay your $60 for internet and watch football. You could also watch video games. You could, I can't remember his name. I want to say his name's Carl Sagan. He used to do a science documentary.
Right.
So there's a Twitch that's dedicated to rerunning those episodes, and they run advertisements, and you know they use that money to keep it afloat. And that's something that, you know, if you guys do that, that could be something to reach out to like charity streamers. You could try to reach out to like Ninja or something. Yeah, he's a Twitch streamer, but he's in a little controversy for, you know, jokes he's made. But you know, there's all kinds of ways we could do it. We could try to get more people in our town to be more tech friendly, because like when I think of Bennington, it's kind of like in the 1920s, 1930s. It seems a little outdated, and you know.
It was the 50s.
Yeah, the 50s and the 60s were really the good years. But like, it would be interesting if we could try to like, as well as promoting art, restaurants and whatnot, that we try to be like, yeah, we like to keep our old-fashioned stuff, but we also know how to be modern, and we know how to get with the times. We understand what a meme is. Like, it would be nice to see that if, while marketing Bennington for its old-fashioned stuff, that makes it unique and individual, that we also try to incorporate the internet and what makes the internet so amazing, because you can, for example, PewDiePie, he has 80 million subscribers, and he had a whole feud with T-Series, which is still going on, by the way. And they're at, I think, 79 million, and, you know, there's a whole conversation about, like, is corporation going to win, or is the grassroots individual who started from nothing and made himself into essentially, you know, what made YouTube really popular in its heyday. And I think that would be an interesting thing that we could try to do in Bennington, where we try to bring more tech, try to bring more streamers, YouTubers, Redditors, or Reddit, try to come up with other memes in Vermont, because like the one that comes to my mind is the maple syrup. You know, like you're a real Vermonter if you use real maple syrup. You're not a Vermonter if you use fake maple syrup. So like that's one joke that goes on the internet sometimes. There's even a Facebook group Facebook page called Vermont Department of Memes, and they just essentially they repost other people's memes about Vermont. And I think that could be something we could use for Bennington as well. You know, we try to make ourselves a little bit of the butt of the joke, but at the same time, that butt of the joke gets people to be like, what else about Bennington's there? So I think if we incorporate a little bit of tech in our town, we might be able to branch out besides just tourism. We might be able to attract more techie people. We might be able to get, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of VidCon. Yeah, that would be an interesting thing that we could potentially, I don't think our town would be big enough for that, but it might be something that we could try to do in some degree. But the bottom line is like, it would be interesting to try to promote and market more tech-based, vloggers, YouTubers, Twitch streamers, all kinds of things that make the internet more entertaining than real life kind of thing.
What's your name again? I'm sorry.
Jack Hurley.
Okay, Jack.
What is it? Last name?
Hurley, Hurley.
How old are you, Jack?
I will be 26 in April.
Chain him to, yeah. Get him in handcuffs and do not let him go.
Well, if I could just speak to that, I think, while I shared Instagram and Facebook today, I think the idea is that there's a whole world out there. I think Matt mentioned like Instagram is really relevant today, but what is that one tomorrow? And you're bringing up that even right now, what are the key ones that are the most relevant? Because you can't do it all, but is Reddit or is Twitch or what are these other avenues, which ones make the most sense? And I think you raised some very good points.
And another cool thing about like Reddit, Twitch, and all these other online sites is moderators work for free. Most of the time, if you get a good enough fan base, your fan base will work for you for free. I've done it a little bit with one streamer. He only had like 30 views or 30 people watching consistently. So I wasn't really doing a lot, but I did learn a little bit about moderating. And I think if we can build a big enough fan base for Bennington, stream-wise, YouTube-wise, whatever-wise, if we get a big enough fan base, a conservative estimate would be like 1% would be willing to work for free as moderators to make sure that it's not full of spam, it's not full of slurs or anything offensive or anything like that. And if people genuinely like the idea, they will do it for free. I mean, we got about 5 people who are doing this for free right now.
Jack, where are you from?
I've lived here for pretty much my whole life. There's been like a couple months when I lived in Rutland.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll come back and let's go from there. We'll go from there, Jack. Other folks that would like to take the mic tonight? Is there anyone else? We're going to continue on our budget discussions. This is our food for thought for Wednesday night, actually. This is not part of the DID budget. Totally different, separate and distinct. It's not part of our SEDS, contribution. It's really a new approach to what we want to take and get our assets out into the communities that are going to come and visit us. But thank you really for all your efforts. It's just a start, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I really do like coming to these meetings. Stu? Nope. We're going to see if we can move right through this. Stu, our municipal policies and codes adoption, they are very dry. It looks to me, hopefully it's very straightforward, just readoption of some of this.
As you may remember, we've had this before us in the past. The Vermont Community Development Program amends their policies and procedures that we must adopt in order to be able to be eligible for funds. So I have circulated before you The amended policy, we highlighted the changes and the new additions, and I'm asking you to make a motion to adopt it and circulate the signature page for your signature.
Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion relative to it. My observation is it's where it's highlighted, there's maybe some few edits or changes, but it's really the nuts and bolts of what we already have been following.
It is.
Well, the whistleblower protection is fairly substantial.
Yeah, but it's
Good
Yep.
addition, yeah.
Yep. More discussion or questions on it? I'd say let's adopt it. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
7 in favor, no opposition to it. Next item on the agenda, Stu?
Is the fire department radio console. You had a presentation, brief presentation at our budget session on Saturday, and the chief is here this evening to follow up on that presentation. Because it wasn't related to the upcoming budget, we placed it on the agenda for this evening. We'll be using funds, I believe all from either this year or grant funds combination. But you know better than me. Reserve funds, thank you.
Reserve funds.
Yeah.
Grant
It's been a
funds
long
seem to be
day.
dried up on this topic.
Before we get going, there was some discussion about common community use and the like of the, can there be a consortium of police, fire, EMS, highway? So we get basically one shot at this, or maybe one investment.
So let me go back. I know I kind of came at you guys at this on this topic at the budget hearing,
right?
And I didn't mean to blindside you with this. It was just everything kind of came together. So the situation is that Rensselaer County over in New York has found a way to come up with some grant funding. We're going to install radios here at the Bennington Fire Facility so that we can have fire ground interoperability radio communications with Rensselaer County and Bennington County fire units. So this is a great opportunity to move forward with our project that we've been planning since 2012. We've been putting away money since 2012 to replace the radio console downstairs. The console is out of date. We can't get parts for it. And again, we've been planning this since 2012. Currently, we've set $74,000 aside in a reserve account to move forward with the radio console project. The total cost on the project is $87,434.01. And that is the max that it would be. We've been in communication with Wells, who's our sole radio provider, and they're hoping to shave a little bit of that with labor. The good news is when they're over here installing the radios for Rensselaer County, they'd be here installing this radio console at the same time, so it's going to save us money. So we're short a total of $13,434.01 to move forward with this project, which we do have available in the reserve account. As far as your question goes about who's going to be using this radio console is primarily going to be used by the Bennington Fire Department. And the police department can also send a dispatcher over to the firehouse if need be, and we can run three dispatchers at the same time, because we would have a third console here. And in the event that the dispatchers were displaced from the Bennington Police Department, it has happened a couple of times, we'd still be able to maintain our radio communications for police, fire, and rescue. So there is some redundancy built in here. This radio system is also used by Bennington County Mutual Aid. We are the host for the radios, so if there is a major fire, Pownell has had 2 in a week. And we're going to run radio communications out for Bennington County Mutual Aid. That is all done right here out of the Bennington Firehouse. We have dispatchers that are trained on the old console. This quote does include training, but the good news is that my dispatchers at the police department are already trained on how to use this console. Just so that there's transparency, there is $3,500 built into this quote so that we can go from version 2.5 to version 5.0 at the police department so that the consoles can talk to one another. So this also includes technically a $3,500 upgrade for the 2 consoles at the police department. So all the consoles would be the same. We don't have the ability at the Bennington Police Department to dispatch for county mutual aid or monitor large structure fires. When we have critical incidents, it does take a dispatcher here in this facility to maintain that and monitor what's going on. And sometimes we send trucks to Hoosick, sometimes we send trucks to Pownell, Arlington, and we do have people to do that here on a volunteer basis. So, you know, with that being said, again, we've been planning this. We started talking about it in 2011. We started saving money for this in 2012. And I'm asking you to vote tonight so that we can move forward with this project. Again, the money is already in a reserve account. I'm not asking for any additional money at this point. The quote is good through February 6th of 2019. And I would like to get started on this. And it's one more thing that I started when I took over as the public safety director that I can cross off my list and make the community safer.
The repeaters and all of those types of things are totally separate, distinct discussions.
Yes, sir. We are talking about continuing to put money in the reserve account for radio communications and perhaps putting up a small tower here on the side of the building and being able to put up repeaters so that we have better fire ground communication, and also reserving spot on that tower for the highway department if they so choose, so that they can have better communications as well. So, I mean, we're not in the city. We're not flatline here. We're in the hills of Vermont. We just saw those beautiful pictures, right? And you know, I think it's the right thing to do. So by going forward with this console, we're heading in the right direction, and at some point we'll have to purchase some repeaters and build a small tower. But that's something that doesn't need to be done today. This needs to be done now.
Tom, for the purposes of moving forward, I'd make a motion that we approve this request and have you act immediately on it.
Second.
Okay, now the discussion.
Again, forgive my ignorance. Does your department, police department, do they do dispatch for the rescue squad? Or is there a mission mutual aid, is that part of that?
So we are currently dispatching for all of the local fire departments, North Bennington, Bennington Rural. We can dispatch for Shasbury. We have the ability to dispatch for Arlington. We also dispatch the Bennington Rescue Squad to their 6,000 plus calls a year for service, and the police department with just over 10,000 calls a year for service. So, you know, we're also running ALS Intercept for Bennington Rescue when they leave the area, and so yeah. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry. My day started at 4 a.m. and I'm just processing what I just said to you, but I'm correct. Sorry.
I'm all set.
So I have made the motion. Just what happens if we wait a year? What's at risk?
What's at risk if we wait a year is the simple fact that the labor will go up because then we're going to have to have wells come back. And it's going to be more time consuming. We're already going to be here running wires and installing radios and things of that nature. At the same time, I've asked Buildings and Grounds to carve out some money out of this year's budget to redo the dispatch room downstairs, put in some new flooring, and we're prepared to do that. As you know, we're going to be doing a project out front in front of the firehouse this spring, and I think we can we can do all of this at one time and do the necessary repairs. I just think it's going to be, it's a cost savings now. It's going to be more money if we put this off because we're not going to have this other project going on that will be complete. And it's fiscally, it just doesn't make sense to wait, honestly.
Okay, large cost savings if we do it right now. Okay, thank you.
We're talking, the reason the chief is here tonight is because this is not for next year's budget, it's for this year's.
We want to move forward with this right now.
Yeah, so those monies are already in reserve other than the 13,000, which you also found for. So it's not really, it's monies we've already budgeted for.
Yes, sir.
Now it's,
Thank you.
Yeah, that was the only part I wasn't entirely clear on. The reserve money, the additional $13,000 has already been budgeted, or you're asking for an additional $13,000?
No, sir.
Okay,
We
that was
have
part.
money in the reserve account.
Right, got it.
Thank you.
The only part that I'm on, when you left last week, or on Saturday, they're a little bit blended in my mind now, Forrest came up and spoke about needing additional money or having money allocated for communication. And I just want to make sure, is there any shared services here that one budget can save money on, whether it be sheriffs or the rescue squad or the highway side of it? Just seems as though that, I mean, we had highway in front of us, and RJ said he had walkie-talkies that couldn't talk across town. And it just, I'm not saying those all relate to you, but is there future cost savings? Is there current cost savings? And I'm not questioning that this isn't a necessity. I just wonder, are we going to be able to save money down the road if you put the tower up and highway can jump onto it? I don't know the answer, but you seem to be the most informed on it.
Oh, boy.
Everybody keeps coming up talking about they want money for communication. And it's just,
I can't answer the question as to whether or not the Bennington Rescue Squad needs money for communications. I'm not sure why the Rescue Squad didn't jump on some of the federal grants that were available when the police department did all of our radio upgrades. I mean, we did our radio upgrades basically using federal funding, federal tax dollars through grants. And I can't speak to that. The walkie-talkie problem, as you call it, I think we had like Star Trek walkie-talkies when we were younger, but they were portable radios.
RJ was here, and he spoke directly to that point. Trucks within
right.
line of sight, and they still didn't work.
So what's happened is, I blame the federal government. What's happened is we went to narrowbanding, and so now it seems like since we narrowbanded our radios, we don't have the communications abilities that we used to have. And so now, you know, they want people to go to P25, they want people to go digital, you know, and that's something that we're going to face in the police department probably in the next 5 years is digital communications. But so that we don't muddy this up, communications is a problem everywhere, especially since we went to narrowbanding. And as far as Forrest goes and his radios, I honestly have not had a conversation with him about his radio issues, but we seem to be able to effectively communicate with him from the police department to the ambulances. As far as the portable radios go, the Bennington Fire Department has had that problem. That's why in last year, the year before, we went to a different channel. We're looking at a repeater system potentially for the fire department down the road. We've put mobile repeaters in some of the vehicles so that we have, like when we went up to the hospital for alarm drops or incidents at the hospital, we weren't able to communicate from outside of the hospital to the firefighters that were inside the building using the portable radios. So, you know, we had to do something about that, and we did. We spent some money and we fixed that problem. But this is not an uncommon problem in the emergency services field right now.
And Carson, if I could follow up on that, Forrest is looking to mount some additional antenna opportunities up on Mount Anthony. He's actually attempting to contact AT&T and get on their tower that's up on Mount Anthony, which is where we currently are with our part of our system. And so I think that's his need. It's a much
yeah. Oftentimes on
more
subjects that I
elevated
don't
need
know
than
much about, I'll walk out of a meeting like this and someone will say, why didn't you ask this question? And the reason being is you're informed on this subject and we look at the budget side of it. I just want a kind of and you're giving us a confident answer that you have looked at this from all sides and you're making a decision here, or we're going to be making the budget decision, but you're telling us that the best thing you can do right now that's going to probably help your service and all the other emergency services in our community, this is the route to go.
100%.
Okay, got it.
The other, you know, the Forrest has contacted Stuart and I. We were very, very fortunate that we had a wonderful working relationship with AT&T. It took us approximately 2 years to move equipment up there, and they signed an agreement at zero cost to the town of Bennington. We're saving a lot of money. Again, zero cost. We're saving a lot of money by having our equipment up on that tower, and they're not charging us any money. It's very expensive to put equipment on towers. Hence the reason why we will continue to save, and we'll put a tower up here at some point, and we'll have our own tower so that we're not having to pay rental fees. So without a doubt, just to close this, this is 100% the right move. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind, and we need this equipment. Again, we've been putting money aside for it, and it's time to move on the project.
Okay. You heard the chief's update and the motion on the floor. All in favor of the request to get it into production so that the contract can be awarded, signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 7 in favor and no opposition. Thank you, Chief. Long day.
Thank you guys very much.
Okay.
Yep, you did a nice job today, you and your people.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, you did.
We're not going to talk about it because we'll be here for another hour.
Thank you.
Okay. We would be. Town manager's report.
Yes, I have only one action item for you this evening, and it's a certificate of highway mileage. We're adding no new mileage this year. We generally just circulate this for signatures. This is filed with the Agency of Transportation, and it's the basis upon which we receive our some $208,000 a year in highway mileage.
So that's been double checked and rechecked because the more miles we get in, the more we get reimbursed.
It's been double checked. We haven't added any mileage this year.
Yeah.
And I don't have any other action items for you tonight, and the remainder of my report is relatively similar to what it has been, but I do have one brief announcement. It is with some sadness, I think, that Zirat Chowdhury, our Community Development Director, has decided to move in a new direction in her life, and she will be submitting her resignation to us. She will be working full-time with us through the end of January and into the end of February on a part-time basis as we move through a transition. We hope to be able to post the position very, very quickly and hopefully find somebody with half her energy and half her enthusiasm.
I think having Zirat on board has been a real education and experience in dealing with what she brought to our community. The advantage that we have now is we have a really good job description for the director. So I would think we probably could get out and get that advertised ASAP, because there are a lot of projects that it's not fair for the in-house staff right now. If we could get that out there like ASAP, it'd be great. Maybe even keep her in a consulting capacity to advise us as we bring someone else on board.
That is the plan.
And we'll talk more about Zirat in another meeting, if that's okay.
Okay. And that's all I have.
Thanks. Jean, other business?
I have nothing.
Can I ask a question?
You better ask a question. Sure.
Yeah, very quick. We're wondering if Sue's been replaced yet for the senior center?
Okay. You can do a quick response.
Susan,
Yeah.
no, we have not replaced Susan. We are in some discussion with the folks from the Y and with others to see whether or not there is an opportunity there as well to closer align the senior citizen center with the recreation center and perhaps improve on some of those things that we are able to offer in the senior center building as well as at the rec center building. So we have not filled that position at this time.
Couple things. My first week in Montpelier was Christmas every day. I'm really enjoying it, and to say that there's a steep learning curve, not accurate. It's vertical. It's completely vertical. I have formulated 2 pieces of legislation that I've shown the governor. One he's shown rather tepid interest in, and then rather enthusiastic interest. And I'm working on my 3rd piece, and I'm looking forward to working hard up there, Ben. I do want to mention the passing of someone who has been very much loved in this community. Her name is Jackie Carson. She was co-owner at JC's Tavern. And one thing that many people may not know about Jackie is that she was a tireless advocate for keeping senior citizens in their homes for as long as they could, and she did it with a company that she worked for out of Boston, and brought it home here to Bennington. So I mourn her loss along with many other Benningtonians.
Thank you, Jim.
A lot happened in Bennington here today, but I'm going to pass on that and just reiterate that I do think that our police department did a very nice job today, and I was glad and proud to have them in our community. It was also nice to have the Attorney General come down and speak to us directly about the very, very difficult situation Kyle Morris was faced with, and I think to give a very nuanced and very thoughtful speech by both the Attorney General and many other people. We have a lot to work on, and I think many of us are in conversation about that, and we just have to double down on that issue. So that's all for tonight.
Yeah, just to speak to that before we go to Jeannie, I think we really, as a board, have a responsibility to expand that discussion of today at this board level, to take to heart what was shared by both Ms. Morris and the Attorney General, because it's our community, and we're supposed to be guiding lights for this community. So I think we got to make that as part of an agenda at some point, to have a real dialogue on those issues that were both nuanced and set forth. Thanks for bringing that up.
I just have one announcement. Amazing event is coming back to the Bennington area. It's been off for several years, but the British Invasion is coming back by our music department as a fundraiser. They did it several years ago, featuring music from the likes of the Beatles, the Animals, Led Zeppelin, Hermits.
Nancy's got it all. She's just going to.
It's put on by students, staff, alumni. Some guests will be performing. So tickets go on sale this Thursday at the high school.
What's the date?
The event is the 26th, thank you. January 26th, I think 7 to 10 p.m.
Where again?
At the high school in the auditorium. It will sell out. Last time they did it, I was amazed. It was a great show, and it's a good fundraiser for the music department. So check it out.
Just one final thing, just as I was coming to the meeting, I just checked out the weekly legislative report. Stu, apparently the league has suggested an endorsement of a pilot program for self-governance. Are you aware of that for 10 communities?
I saw that they were sponsoring and pursuing that. I don't know much about that. I haven't really had a lot of time.
I'll shoot you this. It's interesting.
I get all of that.
But it's January 8th. The Brattleboro Select Board adopted a motion to express strong support for the Vermont League of Cities and Towns proposal to the Vermont State Legislature to create a limited self-governance pilot program for Vermont municipalities. This is really earth-moving if the legislature takes it up, and whether or not it'll be successful. It gives the towns more authority without having to go through like all these charter changes, so we can be driving our own wagon rather than having to ask for help. And I think we have to look at it and see if we might posture ourselves to be in one of those, potentially one of those cities that gets, or towns that gets the opportunity for the 10-year pilot program. Yes.
Sorry, I thought of something.
Oh, that's fine.
I just wanted to take a moment to recognize the Bennington Aces. They had a wonderful fundraiser, and they came and presented twice to the select board, I think in the past year, about the summer program and the program that runs year-round for needy children in our community who get free tennis lessons, free rackets, free sneakers and help with their homework and kind of a mentoring, I guess I would say, initiative. So it was a really great event, and I wish them the best.
Thanks. I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.